Okay, we're live here with Sterling Strother and Bill Patton for the Behind the Blog USA Tennis Coach. And today, Bill, we are going to continue our discussion of the practice court and how to transform it for coaches out there. And we're talking specifically today with you about the idea of progression, the challenge, and then the regression, and then how to take our players through that. And right before we went live, you were talking about understand or getting a feel for what the players can take and what they can't take on court. Like what is their threshold, and how do you figure that out as a coach, right? Because you got some players that you said they just want the top, no, they want you to turn it to 11, right? They want the challenge to be at 11, right? And there's some kids, they want to.
Because it's one more.
Yeah, it's one more. Right. I love that movie, man. Take us through that. How does a coach really evaluate their players and produce this idea of progression, challenge, regression with players so that there's real learning and there's not boredom that's created in our coaching?
Right. Well, okay. The first thing is I could talk forever on this topic because already my mind is flooded with stories of times it was perfect and times it was totally wrong, right? And then also I just wanted to make note of the fact that not only are we live on YouTube right now, but we're also live on Instagram and Facebook. So anybody who's watching who has a little quick comment or question, I'll try to keep an eye on those, and I would like to take questions from people who are live. So I'll let you know. You don't see those, Sterling. All right. So okay, I have a couple stories I think that illustrate this really well. I was coaching against another team, and I thought the other coach could have done a better job of coaching his players. And so he would go on a changeover and he would go yakety, 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 yak. And then I watched as his player walked away from that coaching exchange and went as to shake out all those words that had just happened. And because the player couldn't take all the information, it was an overload of information. They'd gotten really tired of hearing that same sort of overload from their coach, so they just shut it out, right? So I think the number one thing that we need to do is it's far better to undercoach than to overcoach. And I've overcoached before, so that's the first thing.
I think we all have overcoached.
Right. We've all overcoached, and
we want our players to do well. And I think the one thing that separates a mature coach, and I speak this for myself as an example first, is you learn to talk less and you learn to listen more so that when you do say something, it does have an impact or has a chance of having more of an impact.
Right. So Paul Thompson says that's the look he gets most of the time with his players, which I don't think that's true. Okay. But now if we zoom out and we go, all right, let's look at the topic of progression, challenge, and regression, right? Why? What's the importance there? Because I mean, we want to go as fast as the player can go. That ought to be the guiding principle. Go as fast as they want to go. If we're not going as fast as they want to go and as fast as they can go, then we're at risk of boring them. One of the best pieces of advice, I got so much great advice from a geometry teacher that I taught alongside when I was a high school math teacher. And he said, the number one mistake that we make is we don't keep the top kids challenged. You keep your top kids challenged and they won't get bored because they will cause problems for you if they are not challenged. And then you lose everybody. So it's really important to progress your top players as much as possible, as fast as you can, because it it does for, you know, I know people hate the phrase trickle down, but it does. I mean, if you keep your top player challenged, your number one player, your number two player, for fear of being left in the dust, is going to rise up as well, and it goes all the way down your lineup. So very important to progress as quickly as possible. And so a good guideline that I've heard on that is to, and tennis is specific. I mean, this is like a general coaching topic. I mean, in football, you can't really progress until you have pretty much 100% ability to do a certain play, right, from everybody. But with tennis, you kind of have to accept that when they're 70 to 90% successful on something, that it's time to move on and go on to something more challenging, because of the nature of tennis and how there are just more errors built in. So I think that's important. Keeping the progression going, keeping the challenge level high is going to engage them a lot more, and they're going to be a lot more excited about their game. They're going to be, you know, improving so fast. It's exciting. They feel like they have an advantage over everybody else.
All right. So let's expand. Tell me about just the simple progression, challenge, regression. What are you thinking there when you talk about that sequence of going through a beginning of practice?
Hold on, I'm tweaking my the Instagram live. All right, yes, something had a little technical difficulty, but now we're back. Okay. Well, okay, so part of it has to do with the frustration level of the player. So you might be progressing them, and then they're in a challenge level where they're failing at first. You know, whenever you go to a new level, when a kid goes to a higher level program and now the ball's coming 5 to 10 more miles an hour faster on everything, and they're kind of in that overwhelm mode of, oh man, I was the top of the other group and now I'm the bottom of the next group. How do you manage that? And so that, you know, there's going to be some time of failing. We had this discussion yesterday. I did a quick go live yesterday and got some interesting comments from people who said, you know, if they're less than 50% successful, that you should regress. And I don't know if I agree with that percentage, because I think 50% is okay. But I think if they are definitely, if they are less than 25 to 30% successful, then something needs to be taught. There was a big, crazy discussion a couple of years ago about the difference between coaching and teaching, and I don't like to categorize these things so much. But you know, somebody was adamant that you can't coach what hasn't been taught, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't understand that. It doesn't go in my brain. But you know, if a player is lacking a skill that they need to have in order to perform something, then yes, you have to teach them that skills. And you take them to a higher challenge level and that skill breaks down, then you gotta come back and regress into a teaching time. So we progress them to the point of challenge. Then we have to dwell in that challenge time to see how they respond. And then based on the kid, I mean, some kids will go out in a blaze of glory and love the challenge even to their own detriment. And some kids will get so frustrated so quickly that they feel like a failure, and you have to support that. And then other kids are somewhere in the middle, and they'll negotiate that, and they'll swim upstream and make it. And then you'll say, all right, we don't have to go backwards. Mm-hmm. So knowing your player, knowing how they respond to a lack of short-term success, and how much they trust you, how much do you trust them to give you the feedback about whether they're like almost there or not. Mm-hmm. So
right, that's an interesting point about dwelling or meandering in the challenge. You know, it takes patience as a coach to allow your players to meander and start to figure things out. That 1% that no coach can coach, right? It's that learning to deal with the error and then get through it and push through it.
Yeah.
And giving a player enough space to allow them to do that without it hindering what you're trying to achieve if you're in a group.
Yeah.
I think is so important. So,
well, okay. In fact, I got a great comment from Kirk Orahood, who's one of our buddies. All right. So Kirk says, okay, opposite problem of PA's problem, 7 to 8 players, not same level, in respect to the chem teacher's philosophy. If drill set is is challenging for top players, the number 6, 7, 8 players get lost. So that's where I would say then you need to do something different with your practice. So you can't have everybody on the same court sometimes. So if you have 6, 7, and 8 ought to be on a different court doing something else if they just can't hang with it, or you negotiate with them. Hey, you know what? This is really going to be tough for you. Are you ready? It's just can't hang. Well, get with it. I have a funny thing that I do with the ball machine every once in a while. We play a game called Can You Hang, right? And I start with the ball machine, and it's it's shooting 40-mile-an-hour kind of loopy shots with a little bit of spin, and I just go little by little. We go faster and faster and faster. And we have it do crazier and crazier stuff until it's going 85 miles an hour with massive topspin. And the thing is, you stay in the drill until you've made 5 errors, and then you're out. And kids get so motivated about that crazy game. Can you hang with with an 85, 95 mile an hour ground stroke? And I'll take all the spin off and have it be a perfectly flat ball, just
right.
Yeah, and they get excited about that.
You can also take a group game and maybe make the feeds harder for the more advanced players and make them, like, say we play a game called Intensity.
Yeah.
Where they have to, it's a poach volley for the single, it's 2 against 1. So the 2 people on the baseline playing defense and, defending off volleys and smashes.
Right.
So as one person comes in, they do a poach volley. If they win the point, they get a smash. Well, I've talked about this in the earlier broadcast where, like, I'll have them, some players have to let the ball bounce. Or maybe we let everybody let the ball bounce, but you feed it a little bit deeper for those players that are better. So they have to go back, let it bounce. Right. So you can
manage it. Yeah.
You can manage it, but you've got to be creative as a coach with your feed. And there has to be some communication because, players know who are the better players on the court.
Right.
And you have to create an environment where there's mercy.
Right.
And then you get players that come on, let's go.
Yeah. Another thing I do too is, like, if I have a newer player on the court, I go, if anybody hits this girl with the ball, you're dead. Right. I will do it personally. Right. And then we have our number 1 player. It's like, yeah, hit all the missiles at her you want. Hit it as hard as you can at her face, because she's got to be able to deal with that,
Sure.
So,
So talk to me about the Lair Dweck challenge response.
Okay. So, yeah, okay. So, the earliest origins of my understanding on the challenge response comes from Jim Lair. And I think the book was called Mental Tennis. And so he outlined the levels of maturity of players. And I think he's revised this some, but I think it's still really applicable. Anyway, so he said the lowest level of challenge is when you don't give enough effort, because then you can always say, well, I would have beaten you if I had tried. You always have that excuse, you held in reserve, you didn't go all out. So you have a built-in excuse, right? So that's the lowest level. The next one is anger, that fake anger of, I'm better than what you see, I can't believe I'm playing like this, so, which is different than the anger that's internal where you go, I know I can play better. That's a different thing. It's not a show, right? So that's the second level. The next level is when people choke, because the moment, I mean, they're fully engaged in the competition, they're fully there, but their nerves and their lack of confidence get to them, and they shrink back and they don't win. They don't make the shot they need to make. But the final one is the challenge response, where it's just like, you know what, you just love to compete, and hey, here's a passing shot I have to make on break point, or I'm going to lose the match. Made it, didn't make it. Oh well, match over. You know, it was a challenge. I win or lose, I'm happy to embrace that challenge. So then kind of flash forward to Carol Dweck, who wrote a book called Mindset, or Mind Shift, and her discussion about the challenge response was that they gave kids some math problems that were outside of their ability to solve. And they were surprised that kids said, I really like that challenge. I didn't know how to do it. I tried. And they kind of, then what they did is they kind of explained these really difficult math problems to these kids. And they were like, wow, so that challenge level is part of the gateway to the growth mindset. It's when you get excited about something you don't know how to do, which then kind of frees your mind to start solving all sorts of problems at all different levels.
So lead us into the frustration tolerance and the lack thereof, or the lack thereof. Right.
Okay, so I mean, one of my most frustrating, as a coach, one of my most frustrating types of players to play with for a coach are the ones who are blessed with amazing offensive talent. Like they've got a big serve, they have just like slingshot arm, and same thing on the forehand, big forehand, and they can go bang bang, and they can be first strike tennis players because they have the physical tools. They've got the fast twitch muscles. They've got the, they just have the physical tools, but their brain, their personality is a non-aggressive personality, or they've had drilled into them to be consistent, right? And so what happens is they go and they might start a match really strong, boom, boom, playing fast first strike tennis, but then they miss one or two shots, and then what do? They shrink back and they play scared because they don't have enough frustration tolerance to accept the fact that their game's going to be a little streaky, they're going to mix in a few errors, So, like, I mean, and when you think about the players, like some of the greatest players of all time, like a Steffi Graf, who knew that she could have 30 errors in a set and win or in a match, she's going to have 30 errors, 35 errors, because she was going to have 56 winners, or more. So I don't know. I mean, so that's one of my things, is that they don't have the frustration tolerance ability to be able to go, okay, I missed a couple, so what do I have to do to play aggressively and keep the ball in? Maybe I just need a little more topspin, maybe just that much, just enough to make it dive at the end. And then you have players who just by virtue of their personality, and this would be my son is a perfectionist, and so he almost never felt like he had played well. He never felt like he had played a great match. I can't remember a time when he said, I was really happy with how I played. Because he's reflecting on errors. He's thinking about shots he could have made, and then so that kind of defeats his confidence. So, we kind of had to work with that in terms of, when he's practicing and playing, how to make sure that he's successful enough, not put him through too much challenge level, come back and really, go for high levels of mastery for him so that he can be confident in his play to some degree. Other kids, I've had kids who are just like, they can't practice worth a darn, But you put them out in the match and you let them play for your life because they're just gamers, right? I remember this kid, Joey, he was like, this kid was a total goofball in practice. You get him out in the match and he's like, hey, coach, watch this. I mean, he would turn to me like at like 15, he would turn back in his live match and he'd go, coach, watch this. And he just slugs some serve, you know, and he bam, and he win the game. He's like, what'd you think? I'm like, Joey, shut up, you know? So it's like, you know, so I would have this discussion with Joey about, hey, look, you know, you are so much a gamer, but what we need to do is if you improve your practice habits, then your game is going to go up even more. So you have this feeling like you don't have to practice. So kids are wired differently to have different levels of frustration about or not about their perception of their own performance. So we as coaches need to understand them and work with them and help them develop new capacities, either to take it a little easier on themselves or to be a little more detail oriented.
Okay, I like it. I think we can do a whole discussion on that perfectionist.
Yeah.
That's
so many different places to go here.
That gets into how you arrange your practice for players and trying to group them together. You know, so if you have a couple players that are really gamers, get them playing a lot of points, you know, and get them competing more in practice.
Right.
Those that
I got another thing for you here. Here's a common thing. This is really amazes me how common this is, right? What happens very often before the big match, right? The one that you have circled on the calendar, right? The day before the big match, a kid or a couple of kids are going to come up to you and go, hey coach, I got to work on my serve, you know, because I haven't been serving. Tomorrow's the big match. And I want my serve to be like perfectly dialed in, right? Coach, let's go work on my backhand. I'm like, okay, hold on. You know, here's an interesting thing. There's nothing we're going to do right now that's going to dramatically change you for tomorrow. So your game is your game, right? And I want you to play your game the best you can tomorrow, because if you think that somehow we're going to have this silver bullet moment here today, you go home and you're like, oh man, coach got my serve dialed in today. I more likely than not, you're not going to serve well tomorrow. Right? And because there is no silver bullet. There is no guarantee that what you did today is going to translate tomorrow. So you have to have confidence that where you are right now is good enough for tomorrow. All the work was done previous. We did all that work weeks ago.
Yeah.
Now it's time to play.
Yeah, this is an interesting point. I wanna kind of live here for the next few minutes, because this is one of the things that I've really been focused on in my own coaching and with players, is getting them to understand how to stay in the moment. Because when you get that player that goes, oh, I need to make sure that I've got everything set because I need to play a big match tomorrow. Their expectation has just gone through the roof, right?
Yeah.
Or they expect to play amazing tomorrow, okay?
Right.
But yet, with great expectation, there can come great disappointment.
Yeah.
But with the expectation is real, it's in the moment, you embrace the moment, there isn't this big letdown if you blow it, right? So keeping players in the moment, I think that what you said right there, like how you address the player, look, there's no silver bullet, just play your game. You're bringing them back to the moment that we're in right now. Let's just practice well today, and we'll come out tomorrow and you'll play your game. And then, you know, after that, we reevaluate, we assess what you did really well, we assess some of the things you work on. So I think that's a really good point to bring up, is keeping players in the moment and realize where their game is now and embrace that. right then. So
got it. Okay, I got another thing for you too, because I don't do pep talks.
Yeah, I get it. I know. Yeah.
We have a little thing. Basically before the matches, we talk about, here's what the strategies are for today because of the matchups that we have. This girl plays like that, so you're going to do that, blah blah blah. And then we have our little mantra that we say together. Today, confidence is my biggest weapon. I'll give 100% effort and enjoy the competition and show myself strong and wise. I learn from every match. I get 65% of my first serves in play, my fusion position for every shot, and continually pressure my opponent. I love a tough match. So we say that every time. But then if we're having some really big competition, then I will suggest to them this. And there's no emotional pump up about it. I just go, hey, look, it's possible that one or some of you may play the best tennis of your life today. That is possible. And if that's happening, keep going. Right? And if you're not playing the best tennis of your life, then just compete the best you can. Just, lay it all out there when you play. Just do it. And the amazing thing is I have yet to have a time where we didn't get one or two kids who just played out of their mind well because the door was open for them to walk through that.
Yeah, you made a suggestion.
And then also kids who were actually playing pretty bad found a way to gut it out, and just kept, working hard to make every possible shot they could,
So talk about removing the roadblocks.
Okay, yeah.
Go down that road of a player's not performing well in a match. We're talking about high school tennis mainly, or even in college where they can coach now.
Right. It's funny because where I'm seeing most of the roadblocks right now are players who come to me who are like 3-5, 4-0, 4-5, not real strong 4-5s, but they want to be really competitive 4-5s and they want to go on to 5-0, which is about the level of some good high school kids too. So the number one roadblock that I see is that they're engaged in their analytical mind. They have been taught to analyze strokes and they want to try to analyze their way to performing. And that will not work. And then another one they do is they use subjective judgments. Good shot, bad shot. Okay. If I hit a good shot, can I do it again? Right? If I had a bad shot, I have to try harder, right? And they get into the cycle, and that's a frustration cycle right there. So, and then another thing they do is they assign permanence to their problems. So these are some of the roadblocks. So I try to get people to shift away from analysis to awareness. I'm like, okay, I'm not asking you to think about what you should do. I want you to experience what are you doing? What is happening right now, right? And then instead of what should you do, what do you want to do? I had this 4-5-ish guy yesterday who was kind of spraying his forehand, and we'd already identified what was his best true stroke already. It was much simpler than what he was doing. I was like, well, what's going on over there? Well, I'm thinking too much about what the angle of my hand and it needs to be and where do I want my racket head. And I'm like, well, don't you just remember that other shot that you hit that you liked? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, do it again. That's what you want, right? Do that. And it's really that simple, but for some reason our egos aren't satisfied with such simple answers. We like things to be really difficult, and then we can prove that we overcame it with our superior intellect. So then, a lot of people come in with subjective judgments. Every shot, they're evaluating every shot. That was a good shot. That was a bad shot. That shot needs to be better. What do I have to do? Right. And then another one, this is like 3-0 and 3-5 do this all the time. I hit a good shot. Next one sucks. Why can't I hit 2 good shots in a row? What's wrong with me? Right? And so they internalize that. And then they go, so, first they get excited because they hit a good shot. Then they get disappointed that it has a bad shot. Then they start trying harder and harder, and they get tighter and tighter. And then they go frustration. And then it's like they go down the toilet bowl. So this is when I go, whoosh. So you got to flush that down the toilet and just go, just objectively observe what you're doing, and don't put judgments on it.
Okay. So let's finish up.
Yeah,
because this will.
Yeah, I got to run.
No, but this is perfect because lead us into the cycles of improvement. Because you just gave us some examples of roadblocks. Now give us some cycles of improvement through 2 or 3. Take those examples of those players.
Well, okay, so
the one that analyzes every single shot.
Okay, the person who analyzes every single shot, what I like to do, I just catch them. I just catch them the first moment, because you can see it on their face, because you get the furrowed brow, you get the it's amazing how easy it is as a coach to read players when they're over analyzing, right? So I think the most important thing to do is to stop them the first time they start to enter that cycle, because in order to break the cycle, you stop that cycle, and then you go, all right, boom. Look, do you see how you just started over analyzing right there? Right? And they go, yeah, you caught me again. Right? I'm like, okay, well, stop. Is that what you want to do? They go, no. Right? I'm like, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to hit that forehand like that. I want to hit that smooth, forehand that's simpler. I'm like, okay, go. No,
no. Can I say this though, Bill?
Yeah.
I think that I used to be like this, but not anymore. I guess it's just I'm getting older, and I'm 49, so I'm like, 40s I didn't give a crap. 50s I'm really not going to give a crap, right? So I just look
up on half a century, man.
Yeah, man. I look at the players, like especially the adult players, but I do it to the kids, and I look at them and go, you know what? Stop it. Just stop hitting that shot, right? And they look at me perplexed, like I can't believe the coach actually told me to stop, and he thinks that's going to work. Guess what? That's where it begins.
Right.
You have to determine stop, relax, breathe.
Yeah.
Let's look at this for what it really is. Your forehand's not going to be like Federer's, okay? Because you're not Federer.
Right.
Okay. It's going to be as good as you can make it, but it begins with you stopping where you are and going forward. Now, take us through another cycle of improvement.
Well, I wanted to say one more little thing about that too, because actually, no, I think this is a different thing. I ask them, hey, was that error necessary? Did you have to make that mistake right there? And it's funny because they're like shocked, and same way they're like, well, no. I'm like, okay, well then don't.
Right.
Yeah. So people make these unnecessary errors because they think that's who they are. People assign permanence to their problems, and that's part of the problem in itself. So I always, and they love this one. I don't know. I think they think I'm like a megalomaniac when I say this, but I don't care. I say, where are all my problems? And they go, and they like, I don't know. I go, they're all in the past. And you know why? Because I haven't started any new problems yet. Right? So theoretically, at this moment forward, I could live a perfect life. Right? I don't have permanent problems. You don't have permanent problems. That backhand, your former backhand, yeah, you used to have a bad backhand, but right now your backhand is sweet and we're moving forward. So can you drop your problem that you had with a bad backhand and let's go that way? So unfortunately, there are a lot of coaches who allow players to live with permanent problems, and then they make lots of private lesson money that way. Working on that permanent problem that somebody has.
I think that gets us to the idea of just overdoing.
I have a hard stop in 1 minute.
Yeah, okay. The overdoing of the perfection of strokes. it actually makes more money if you can convince the player it's about perfecting the stroke. That's how you're going to
win. Money. It's a hit.
You know what though? Interesting is you can make a good career out of actually being honest with your players and actually getting them to win points, because if you can get players hooked on winning, that's much more addictive than actually trying to perfect a stroke.
Awesome. I'm out.
I'm out too. Thanks.
All right. Bye.